Everybody loves the feeling of knowing that they have dinner ready and waiting for them in their freezer when they get home. Today, we're making the best of hearty pasta sauce, gooey cheese, and we're putting together stuffed shells that you can freeze individually and pull out just the number you need. Whether you need to feed 2 people or 20, this recipe will take care of it. Join me in the kitchen, I'll show you how. To make your stuffed shells, we've got to start by wilting a little bit of spinach. So I've got a couple of tablespoons of good olive oil here in our skillet. Make sure you're using a real olive oil if at all possible. There's a lot of fakes on the market today. Then I've got a couple of teaspoons of garlic. You can use a couple tablespoons if you want to. We're just going to kind of work that around. We don't want it to get brown. We just kind of want to let it release its flavors, 30 seconds or so. I'm using my cedar wood mallet that I bought from a lovely little local fella. I love it, handmade. Okay, and then we're going to go with 4 cups of baby spinach. It's better to use the baby because the stems are smaller and it's going to cook down a little bit easier for you. So 4 cups looks like a lot. It's going to seem like a lot, but it's going to wilt down to almost nothing. So pile her up in there. I'm completely eyeballing this. All right, we're going to cook this down until it's all wilted. We're going to let it cool just a little bit, and then I'll show you how to mix it with your fillings to get your shells ready for the freezer. See you in a second. The spinach came out of the skillet and I allowed it to cool. You can see it really came down to just nothing almost. So if you want, I had to go ahead and chop mine up a little bit with a knife to make sure I didn't have any stems or anything that was too big in there. So I've kind of chopped that down and I've got it in a bowl over here and it has cooled off. Now we're going to make the filling for the shells. So in this bowl I have Parmesan cheese. Use a really good Parmesan. Don't use that bottled stuff that's powdery, please. Ricotta and a little bit of mozzarella cheese. So I've got all those here in the bowl together. Dairy always needs salt. Don't forget that, please. So we're going to add a really good pinch of salt. Don't be afraid. You need it in there. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and add our spinach in. So we'll get that in there. And then we're going to drop in an egg, and that's just going to be our binder. Kind of hold everything together. A little bit of pepper. As much as you want. It's great to go ahead and buy a pepper grinder of some kind. They're really affordable, and the pepper is always much fresher, so that's a good thing to do if you don't have one. And then for our basil, I don't have good basil where I live in the wintertime, so what I'm using today is what we call a stir-in paste. Now you have to check the ingredients. Sometimes they're not as good as they could be, but this particular one is really nice, and it's just a little bit more of a slightly dehydrated version of fresh basil. The flavor's good. You can use dried basil here if you wanted to as well. Then I've got a little bit of fresh parsley, so I'm just going to throw that in. Fresh parsley is available year-round and it's dirt cheap and I love it. So please invest in fresh ingredients if you can. And then this little douche-walkie here is a nutmeg. This is the whole nutmeg. You may have the ground dried version, that's fine. The flavor of a whole nutmeg is just a lot nicer. It's fresher, it's bolder, and it helps round out the flavors in dairy products or when you're eating cream sauces, that sort of thing. It just gives a nice depth of flavor. So just a couple of scrapes across there, and then this is going to go back in its container until I need it again. And if you don't have a microplane, speaking of which, this is what I use. This one is by Microplane. It is sharp as a whip and absolutely something you need in your kitchen. So once we've got all that in there, this is a simple stir it up. And then I'm going to show you how to stuff these shells. Now here's the trick for stuffing your shells. As you'll see here, I have several of these jumbo shells that I've gone ahead and cooked. They're 3/4 of the way cooked. You don't want them so soft that they're falling apart, but you don't want them so hard that you can't work with them. So they're 3/4 of the way done, and I'm going to show you how to fill them in a very simple way. And the trick for this is with a sandwich bag or a Ziploc bag, a freezer bag. This one's a freezer bag. It's a little heavier than a sandwich bag. And all we're going to do is take our filling. And you can do this in sections. Let's see how neatly I can get this in here. We're going to drop our filling in here. So when it's time for dinner, all you have to do is get out the number of shells that you need. So if you're cooking for 2 people, this is a fabulous recipe because you just need enough shells for 2 people. So all we do with our shell, when we've got it out here, is squeeze the bag and look at that genius. See if you can get the spinach to not stick to everything. Wow. That is so much simpler than fighting it with a spoon. So just gently squeeze your shell till it kind of pops open a little bit and then just drop that filling in there. I'm going to fill all of these up and then I'm going to put them on this cookie sheet into the freezer so they can freeze individually before I drop them into an airtight container and they'll be ready for dinner. To see more in our Stock Your Freezer dinner series, you can check out this playlist right here that has everything in it you'll need to make sure you've got meals on the ready all the time. Thanks guys, I'll see you in the next video.